what if I told you that your life has no pre-written meaning and that this terrifying freedom you have, what if that's actually your greatest power? Today, we're embarking on a journey, a deep dive, really, into the heart of existentialism. Now, this isn't about finding easy answers.
No, definitely not.
It's about confronting some pretty profound questions. Questions about identity, meaning, morality, freedom, even the concept of God.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack 5 really foundational philosophical texts. These are the works that gave birth to this whole way of thinking. We'll try to extract the most important insights, and connect them to modern life, your life, really. Think of it as a way to see how these ideas challenge what we often just take for granted. You might even have an aha moment about the radical ownership you actually have over your own existence.
Okay, let's get into it then. Our first stop is with the Danish philosopher and theologian Søren Kierkegaard. We're looking at 2 key texts, Fear and Trembling and the concept of anxiety. And Kierkegaard, he stands out immediately, doesn't he? Because he tackles these huge existential questions, but through the lens of faith.
Absolutely. In Fear and Trembling, he really pushes back against this idea that faith is, simple or easily acquired. He points out that for the ancient Greeks, something like dexterity and doubting was considered a lifelong task. But now, he says, everyone just starts there, assuming faith is the easy part.
Right.
But for him, faith was a task for a whole lifetime because it was assumed that dexterity and faith is not acquired in a few days or weeks. It's work, hard work.
And he maps out these 2 crucial stages, these movements an individual has to go through. Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, sure. First up is infinite resignation. And this sounds bleak, but it's a profound, painful, but ultimately reconciling movement. It means giving up, truly renouncing everything you cherish in the world, even the dearest things, without any promise you'll get them back.
Wow.
But it's not about despair, weirdly enough. It's about finding a kind of peace, a comfort in sorrow, after draining that cup of sadness, as he puts it. He uses this powerful image of a shirt spun under tears, the cloth bleached with tears, the shirt sewn with tears, saying it offers better protection than iron and steel. So this radical letting go, this resignation, that's the last stage prior to faith. He's very clear. One who has not made this movement has not faith.
Okay, so you renounce everything, then what?
Then comes a really mind-bending part, the night of faith. This figure makes another movement, one that's even more wonderful, more paradoxical. After infinitely renouncing it all, they grasp everything again by virtue of the absurd. They genuinely believe they'll get back what they resigned. Purely in virtue of the fact that with God, all things are possible. This absurd he talks about here, it's beyond reason. It's not something the understanding can grasp. The night of faith can fall down in such a way that the same second it looks as if one were standing and walking. To transform the leap of life into a walk, absolutely, to express the sublime in the pedestrian that only the night of faith can do, and this is the one and only prodigy.
So it's like living out an impossible conviction.
Exactly. It's an irrational, absolute belief that just defies logic. A radical leap.
Which brings us to that really challenging part, the idea of suspending ethics. How did that fit in?
Yeah, that's where it gets really uncomfortable for many. He uses the story of Abraham and Isaac. He calls Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac a teleological suspension of the ethical, meaning that Abraham's act, preparing to kill his son because God commanded it, is so paradoxical that it cannot be thought at all, because it implies the individual is higher than the universal. His personal absolute duty to God overrides the universal ethical obligation to love and protect your child. It basically puts individual faith, that direct line to the absolute, above societal or universal moral laws.
That's a heavy concept.
It absolutely is. It challenges everything we normally think about morality.
Okay, so that's fear and trembling.
Yeah.
How does the concept of anxiety build on this, especially this link between anxiety, freedom, and sin?
Right. In the concept of anxiety, Kierkegaard dives into angst or anxiety. He sees it as this fundamental psychological state unique to humans. It's the psychological manifestation of the awareness and consequences of sin. It pops up when you recognize your own freedom, your potential for sin. It bridges that gap between innocence and guilt.
So freedom itself creates anxiety.
In a way, yes. He looks at the fall of Adam as not just some old story, but a template for how innocence is lost through guilt. He thinks the potential for sin is just part of being human. And he makes this distinction between objective anxiety, sort of the collective human condition, maybe tied to hereditary sin, and subjective anxiety, which is your personal experience. Your guilt, your awareness of your own freedom, your choices.
Mm-hmm.
So anxiety isn't just, feeling nervous. It's woven into our being. It's a consequence of freedom, of our potential.
So for Kierkegaard, facing your freedom means facing anxiety, and it's all tied up with your relationship to God, to the divine.
Exactly. It's a very theistic form of existential thought.
Which, as you said, sets him quite apart from our next thinker.
Radically different, yes.
All right. Let's turn to Friedrich Nietzsche and Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a text famous for a really seismic declaration.
Yes, Nietzsche's God is dead. And it's so easily misunderstood. It's not Nietzsche gleefully killing God off.
Right, it's more of an observation.
Exactly. It's a profound observation about the modern world, that the traditional religious and moral frameworks, the old tables of values, as he calls them, have lost their grip, their power, their authority. This leaves humanity kind of adrift. No pre-given meaning, no universal values handed down, which is terrifying, but also
Huge responsibility.
immense responsibility.
Oh.
Suddenly, we have to create values. He sees it as this pivotal moment, the great noontide, where the higher man becomes master.
So if God is dead and the old structures are crumbling, what fills that void? What drives us, according to Nietzsche?
Well, for Nietzsche, the fundamental drive isn't just survival or seeking pleasure, it's the will to power.
Which sounds aggressive.
It can be misinterpreted that way, but it's deeper than just domination. It's this inherent urge within life itself for growth, for expansion, for overcoming obstacles, for creativity, and crucially, for constantly reevaluating and creating values. He has, as Zarathustra say, whatever I create and however much I love it, soon must I be adverse to it, and to my love, so willeth my will. It's this constant striving, this dynamic force. Verily, my will to power walketh even on the feet of thy will to truth.
So it's about embracing everything, even the difficult stuff.
Yes, affirming life in its totality, including suffering, seeing it as a path to strength, to self-mastery. And this leads to his vision of the Overman, or Übermensch. This isn't some master race idea, it's an ideal. A human who transcends conventional morality, the herd mentality he despised.
The herd being.
Sort of. Mass thinking, conformity, weakness disguised as virtue. The Overman creates their own virtues, beyond traditional good and evil. Nietzsche warns against the preachers of death, those who promote asceticism, weakness, otherworldliness. He even says, woe unto all loving ones who have not an elevation which is above their pity, suggesting even pity can drag you down if it's not balanced with strength.
He also had this fascinating idea about how the human spirit evolves, right? The metamorphoses.
Yes, the three metamorphoses of the spirit. It's a great metaphor for this journey of self-creation. First, the camel. The spirit as a beast of burden, dutifully accepting traditions, rules, many heavy things, reverence, duty.
Taking on the weight of the past.
Exactly. Then the lion. The spirit becomes a destroyer. It needs freedom. It roars no to the thou shalt of old values. It fights the dragon of tradition in the desert of lost meaning.
A necessary rebellion.
Crucial, but not the final stage. That's the child. The child embodies innocence, forgetfulness, a fresh start, a sacred yes. The child is pure creation, affirming life, creating new values without resentment or guilt or that heavy sense of duty. It's about moving beyond just destroying old morals to actually building your own.
And then there's probably his most challenging idea, the eternal recurrence. What's that about?
The eternal recurrence. It's a thought experiment, maybe more than a literal belief. Zarathustra is called the teacher of the eternal return. The idea is, imagine that every single event in your life, every joy, every sorrow, every thought, every tiny detail will repeat itself exactly as it happened an infinite number of times.
Wow, that's daunting.
It's meant to be. It's the ultimate test of life affirmation. Could you honestly, joyfully, will this exact life with all its suffering and absurdity to return forever? If you can say yes to that, then you've achieved true self-mastery, true affirmation. It forces you to take absolute ownership of every moment, every choice.
So, wrapping up Nietzsche, how does this change how we view ourselves, our identity?
Fundamentally, he completely rejects the old soul-body split. He asserts, body am I entirely and nothing more, and soul is only the name of something in the body. Our identity isn't some separate spirit. It is our physical, striving, living existence. This focus on self-creation, individual strength, the body. It's a stark contrast to Kierkegaard's reliance on God and faith, isn't it?
Absolutely. A very different path. Okay, let's move on. Now we turn to Albert Camus and the myth of Sisyphus. This one seems to tackle the most basic existential question head-on. Is life worth living?
Right. Camus doesn't mess around. He states right at the beginning, the meaning of life is the most urgent of questions. And his central concept is the absurd. Now, it's crucial to distinguish this from Kierkegaard's absurd. For Kierkegaard, the absurd was the paradox of faith beyond reason. For Camus, the absurd is something different.
What is it then?
It's the clash, the divorce, as he puts it, between man and his life, the actor and his setting. It's this fundamental conflict between our deep-seated human craving for meaning, for reason, for clarity, for unity, and the universe's cold, silent indifference. Its utter lack of inherent meaning or reason. This gap, this tension between our longing and the world's silence, that is the absurd. And this feeling, he notes, often has a direct connection with the longing for death.
So if life is absurd, inherently meaningless, does Camus think suicide is the logical response?
No. Emphatically no. He rejects literal suicide, calling it a confession that life is just too much for you, or that it is not worth the trouble. But he also rejects what he calls philosophical suicide, escapism, trying to deny or abolish the absurd by leaping into comforting beliefs. Like religious faith, he directly critiques Kierkegaard's leap as a subterfuge, a dodge, or by retreating into abstract philosophical systems that pretend to have all the answers.
So you can't kill yourself, and you can't pretend the problem away. What's left? What's the answer to the absurd?
The answer, for Camus, is rebellion.
Rebellion against what? Against God, fate.
Against the absurd itself. It's a conscious, constant, defiant revolt against the meaninglessness. It means living with full awareness of the absurd, embracing it, but without hope for some external meaning, without illusions, and crucially, without falling into despair. As he says, crushing truths perish from being acknowledged. Face it head on.
And in this rebellion, we find freedom.
Exactly. That's where true freedom lies. The absurd man realizes that hitherto he was bound to that postulate of freedom on the illusion of which he was living. Once you abandon hope for external purpose, for guarantees, for an afterlife, then you become truly free.
How so?
Because you're free from those illusions, free to create your own meaning, your own value, right here, right now, in this life, moment by moment. That freedom, born from acknowledging the absurd, is what matters.
Which leads us perfectly to Sisyphus, right? He's the poster child for this.
He absolutely is. Sisyphus, the guy condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a hill forever, only to watch it roll back down every single time.
The ultimate picture of a pointless, futile existence.
Precisely. The epitome of meaninglessness. Yet, Camus delivers that knockout line. One must imagine Sisyphus happy.
Happy? How?
Because Sisyphus finds meaning and even joy, not in the goal, which is unattainable, but in the struggle itself, in the conscious act of pushing, in his awareness of his fate and his defiance of it, simply by continuing. He owns that rock, owns that moment. It's a powerful image showing that happiness isn't about outcomes, but about the conscious, rebellious engagement with life, even an absurd one.
So Camus is calling us to live passionately, fully embrace the struggle, even without any guarantee of ultimate meaning.
That's the heart of it, yes. Live intensely in the face of absurdity.
Okay. Our final deep dive takes us to Jean-Paul Sartre and his massive work, Being and Nothingness.
Sartre gives us what many consider the absolute bedrock principle of existentialism.
He really does. And that principle is summed up in the famous phrase, existence precedes essence. Meaning, unlike an object, say a paper knife, someone first has the idea of the paper knife, its essence, its purpose, its design, and then they create it. It comes into existence.
Okay. For human beings, Sartre says, it's the complete opposite. We are born, we exist first, we're just thrown into the world, there's no pre-existing blueprint, no divine plan, no inherent human nature or purpose, essence that defines us beforehand. Then through our choices, our actions, what we do, that's how we create our essence. We define ourselves as we go along.
So no fixed soul or inherent identity we're born with.
Correct. Sartre makes this distinction. There's being in itself. So think of inanimate objects like a rock. They are just what they are. Static, complete, fixed, non-conscious. And then there's being for itself. Poor stool. That's human consciousness. And consciousness, for Sartre, isn't a thing at all. It's characterized by nothingness.
Nothingness. That sounds bleak.
It's not meant negatively. It's more like a lack, a gap, a hole in being. This nothingness, he says, lies coiled in the heart of being like a worm. It creates a cleavage, a separation between our past and our present, allowing us to change, to choose, to not be determined by what we were. Consciousness simultaneously is to be what it is not and not to be what it is. It's always reaching beyond itself, always in flux.
And this lack, this nothingness, this non-fixed nature
Yeah.
that leads directly to his famous line about being condemned to freedom, doesn't it?
Exactly, because there's no pre-written script, no essence dictating who we must be, no external force pulling the strings. We are radically free. And because we're radically free, we are absolutely responsible for every single choice we make. Every action defines who we are becoming. There's no escaping it. We are condemned to freedom, through into freedom.
No excuses.
None. Sartre is hardcore on this. He says, I am responsible for my very desire of fleeing responsibilities. Even choosing not to act, being passive, that's still a choice you're responsible for. Even suicide is one mode among others of being in the world. He even argues that the obstacles we perceive are, in a way, created by our freedom. It's our free projects that define things as obstacles. Our freedom itself creates the obstacles from which we suffer.
That sounds like an almost unbearable weight of responsibility. What does that feel like?
It feels like anguish. That's the term Sartre uses. Anguish isn't just everyday anxiety. It's the profound, dizzying vertigo you feel when you truly grasp this absolute freedom and responsibility. It's the realization that man is always separated by a nothingness from his essence, meaning your past doesn't lock you in and your future isn't guaranteed. You have to constantly choose, constantly create yourself anew. It's the fear of not finding myself at that appointment, the appointment with the future self you haven't yet chosen to be.
So how do people cope? Because that sounds overwhelming.
Well, often, according to Sartre, they cope through bad faith. Mauvaise foi.
Which is basically self-deception.
Exactly. It's pretending you're not free.
Yeah.
Trying to escape responsibility by convincing yourself you are a fixed thing, determined by your role, your past, your emotions, or your circumstances. Fleeing what it cannot flee to flee what it is. His famous example is the waiter who plays the role of waiter too perfectly, trying to become just that function, denying his own terrifying freedom and contingency.
So claiming I couldn't help it or that's just the way I am, that's bad faith.
For Sartre, yes. Psychological determinism, blaming your background. It's all fundamentally an attitude of excuse. It's an attempt to fill the void, to escape the anguish of freedom by pretending you're just an object and in itself.
Okay, one more piece from Sartre. Other people. How do they factor into this picture of radical individual freedom?
The existence of other people fundamentally changes things. When another person looks at you, what Sartre calls the look, you suddenly experience yourself differently. You become an object in their world, judged through their freedom. By the mere appearance of the other, I am put in the position of passing judgment on myself as on an object, for it is as an object that I appear to the other. This leads to shame. Shame is the recognition. I recognize that I am as the other sees me. Their look can kind of freeze you, define you, limit your possibilities, making you aware of this me that exists for them outside your own control.
So others challenge our sense of pure subjective freedom.
They certainly complicate it. And finally, Sartre suggests that deep down, the fundamental project of human beings is kind of impossible. We strive to be God.
To be God.
Not literally, but to achieve the state of being in itself for itself. To be completely fixed and solid like an object in itself and fully conscious and free like consciousness for itself. To be the absolute foundation of our own being. But because consciousness is that nothingness, that constant flux, this is an inherently contradictory and doomed project, a perpetual failure. We can never achieve that static, self-conscious perfection.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. Kierkegaard's leap, Nietzsche's will, Camus' rebellion, Sartre's freedom. Let's try to bring it all together. How would you define existentialism now, drawing on all these thinkers? What's the core message that speaks to both the head and the heart?
Well, boiling it down, existentialism at its heart is the philosophy that confronts human existence head-on. It sees us as fundamentally free, radically responsible, thrown into a world that doesn't give us a pre-written script or meaning. It's about acknowledging and dealing with the anxiety, the angst that comes with that sheer terrifying freedom. And then crucially, it's about the challenge, the call to live authentically.
Authentically meaning?
Meaning choosing your life, defining your own values, creating your own essence through your actions, fully aware that you are the author. And importantly, despite dealing with angst and absurdity, it's not ultimately about despair. Quite the opposite, really.
How so?
It's about radical ownership. owning your existence, your choices, the direction of your life. It's about realizing that even if the universe is silent or seems absurd, you possess the power to forge meaning, to create value. It emphasizes this ongoing process of self-creation. You're never finished. You're always becoming, always choosing who you are, even when facing external pressures or that objectifying look from others.
So it's a call to action.
Absolutely. A profound call to action. Live a life that is genuinely chosen by you, for you. Take responsibility. Be authentic.
So in the end, existentialism doesn't hand you the answers.
No easy answers here.
It gives you the terrifying, maybe exhilarating gift of being the one who must create them. If this deep dive sparks something inside you, if these ideas resonated, make sure you subscribe to the deep dive for more explorations into philosophy, ideas, and life itself. And we really want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What does freedom mean to you after hearing all this? Let's get a conversation going.